In this video for section 12.1, we're continuing working with the ANOVA test. And so if we have done the test and if we reject the null hypothesis, recall that that means that we are concluding that at least one of the means is different from the others. And in a real-life situation, we probably want to know which one or which ones of them are different. So for example, in my sandwich company problem from the last video, we did not find that there was a difference in the average customer spend. But if we had found a difference, we would probably want to know which location or which locations were significantly different. And the way that we do this is with what is called the Tukey-Kramer procedure. So we're going to look at an example here. We have a company that makes disc brakes for automobiles, and they're testing 4 brake systems to determine if there is a difference in the average stopping distances. So we have our 4 systems, system A, B, C, and D, and we are testing them each on 10 cars and recording the number of feet required to bring the car to a full stop. So we want to use a one-way ANOVA test to determine whether the 4 systems have the same or different mean stopping distances. And we want to use a significance level of 0.05. So we're going to start with our null and alternative hypotheses as usual, and recall with an ANOVA, my null hypothesis is that each of the means are equal. So we have 4 systems in this case. So my null hypothesis is that mu1 is equal to mu2 is equal to mu3 is equal to mu4. And then my alternative hypothesis is that at least one of the means is different. So at least one system has a different mean stopping distance. So once I have my null and alternative hypotheses, I'm going to go to my data in Minitab and do my test. So again, this spreadsheet, Minitab worksheet is in Blackboard if you want to download it and follow along. I have my data here for my 4 braking systems. And so what I'm going to do is do my ANOVA test. I'm going to go to Stat, go to ANOVA, and then go to One Way. And then I'm going to change the drop-down menu to response data or in a separate column for each factor level, because each level, in this case each brake system, is in its own column in my spreadsheet. Then I click in the responses box and select each of the brake systems that I want to use in my analysis. I'm using all 4 A, B, C, and D. Do not select the car column because that's just identifying the car. Then I'm going to click on this comparisons box. Now in this box, I need to enter the error rate for comparison, which is my alpha in the problem. And I'm going to enter that as a percent. So my alpha in my problem was 0.05, and so that's 5%. So I want this box to say 5. And so it'll already say that. That's going to be the default. If it was 10%, I would change it to 10, or if it was 1%, I would change it to 1. So that needs to match whatever your alpha level is. And then I'm going to check the Tukey box. So once I check that box, then I can click OK, and then I can click OK again. And it's going to give me my results here. So just like before, we're going to start with identifying our F value and our P value in our analysis of variance table. My F value here is 3.89 and my P value is 0.017. So let me write those down. The F value you're going to need to enter into MyLab, and the P value we're going to use to determine whether we reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. So 3.89 is my F value, and my P value is 0.017, and so we're going to compare that to alpha, which is 0.05. So since my P value is less than alpha, that means that we reject the null hypothesis. And so that means that I have evidence to support the alternative, or I have evidence that at least one system has a different mean stopping distance. So since I rejected the null hypothesis, it makes sense to ask the question, which one of the systems is different, or which ones? And so it makes sense to use the Tukey procedure. If I did not reject the null hypothesis, then there is no difference or no evidence that there is a difference, and so it doesn't make sense to ask the question which one is different if there is no difference. But I rejected the null hypothesis, so I do have evidence that there is a difference. And so if I continue scrolling in my results window, I will see the results of the Tukey comparison. And so go down toward the bottom here, and it shows those results in two different ways. The first is using this table, and the way that the table works is that means that do not share a letter are significantly different. So I'm looking for the blank spaces here. So this is telling me that break A and break C are significantly different. This is the grouping here. Grouping A is that A, B, and D are similar, and B, D, and C are similar. A and C are not similar. I think it's a little bit easier to use this second image here, which creates a confidence interval for each possible pair. So we see break B and A are paired here, break C and A, break D and A. And then as we go to the bottom, we see it says, if an interval does not contain 0, the corresponding means are significantly different. So we're looking at this green dotted line here. If the bar does not cross that green dotted line, that means that the two are significantly different. And we can see that each bar will cross the green dotted line. This one here is just barely crossing. The only one that doesn't is the break C and break A bar. And so what that tells us is that break A and C are significantly different. So the two images show us the same results. It's just a different way of looking at it. So I'm going to go back here and write that down. So breaks A and C have significantly different mean stopping distances.